welcome in the creator, the writer, and the director of the Best Man franchise, Mr. Malcolm D. Lee.
You said earlier your intention was to make a classic off the Best Man. What was your expectation?
I think I was ahead of my cast in that knowing that it was not going to cross over. To accept seeing 8 black faces on a movie poster that was not Denzel, Eddie Murphy, or Will Smith, right? And that made people say, oh, I can see that. Most people who are not black was like, oh, that's for black people. But regardless, I knew the movie was special, and I knew these actors were special, and they could hold a candle to any working actor at that time. It was really great because all these writers really love The Best Man, the legacy of The Best Man, and they really like gave their all. Now, sometimes they get off track and well, da-da-da-da. I'm like, no. Harper would never do that, or Ronald would never do that, or Jordan. No. But here's
I created them.
I have to trust my actors. They have to trust me. It's a two-way street. Kevin's like, man, this was good, man. This was good. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I know. Right?
This is what I do.
It's my job to know.
Lance Morris Chestnut says, I'm about to run a Boston on you, and they all start cracking up. Was that improvised or was that scripted? Because that was the perfect. That was perfect. Oh my God, that was perfect.
People start putting some respect on Lance Sullivan's name and his game.
Is it really, really done, or is there any change in your mind maybe down the road? Could we see an elderly Best Man reboot?
Best Man, assisted living? Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome to Brother from Another on Friday the 13th. I don't know if that means anything to you. Does it mean something to me? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. I can't be one of those people who says, oh, no, I don't pay attention to that. I do pay attention. And so I'm just kind of looking around, and I'm not trying to tempt fate or do anything crazy like that. But seriously, glad to have you all on going into one of my favorite weekends on the sports calendar, the start of the football playoffs. I know there'll be some blowouts this weekend. I expect, not to spoil my bets, your money, but I expect Buffalo to win by 30 or 50 or 100 over the Miami Dolphins. I know a lot of you don't give Seattle a chance over San Francisco, but I'm still looking forward to the playoffs and looking forward to chatting with you wherever you're watching, whether it's on peacocktv.com or if you're watching on YouTube, listening on Sirius XM, channel 85, which, as you know, is what? Go ahead and say it. If you really are a follower of the show, you know what I say here. It's 35 spots down from the groove. Anyway, no matter how you consume this show and whether you're listening or watching, we appreciate you. And I want to say, before we bring in our brother Jim Trotter, it's amazing. I talk about this playoff weekend. It's amazing how quickly things change in the NFL. Like the cliche when you're a parent is, oh, they grow up so fast. And, oh, I remember when he or she was, this tall. But usually you're talking about a process of, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. In the NFL, it's not even years. It's not even a whole year. Okay, put it this way. As we talk about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals, This time last year, you would have been a fool. You would have been considered a fool. Hello, self. If you had, hello, Mike Smith, because I was on the other side. If you would consider the Cincinnati Bengals a serious contender, a reliable contender in the NFL, and if you had called them, without qualification, one of the best teams in the NFL, people would have looked at you like you were crazy. They would have talked about the long playoff streak, hadn't won a playoff game since 1991. A boomer, literally a boomer. Boomer Esiason was a quarterback the last time they won a playoff game. And here we are now. Cincinnati and the Ravens. The Ravens, this time last year, even though they didn't make the playoffs, this time last year, they were stable, smart money, good franchise. You can count on them. In Cincinnati, you weren't sure if they were a joke or not. Now, I'm not saying the Ravens are a joke, far from it. But as they go into Cincinnati and look to knock off the Bengals, think about how many questions the Ravens have surrounding them. And think about how you consider the Cincinnati Bengals. And at the center of that for the Ravens is their quarterback. This man right here, Lamar Jackson. I don't know Trotter agrees. Let's bring in Trotter. I'll start him off with this question. You know, I know Trotter agrees that, I think we were both on board, that we like what Lamar Jackson was doing contractually. We like that he was betting on himself. We like that he looked at the Deshaun Watson contract, Trotter, and said, okay, if you're going to give that man a guaranteed contract, and he hasn't played football in a little bit, he's never been an MVP, you better give me a guaranteed contract, and that he bet on himself. And right now, it's looking very questionable for Lamar Jackson with his contract going forward. It's looking very questionable for the Baltimore Ravens as they take on the Bengals in this playoff game. So you agree that, you know, it's just how crazy how things change so quickly in the NFL.
What do you mean by it looks questionable in terms of Lamar and his contract? I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Well, I'd say because of his injuries, you don't know what that market is. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a 1-year, $10 million guy. He's going to get a big contract, but I think the size of the contract is affected by the injuries the last couple of years. He's not going to be begging anybody for money. I just wonder how the Ravens and the rest of the league will approach Lamar based on his injury situation.
Well, Michael, you know this. First of all, if he doesn't do a long-term deal with the Ravens this year, he is going to get a 1-year deal for over $40 million. So he will be doing well in 2023. After that, if he goes out and plays the way that we know he can play, at that point, he will either get a multi-year extension to his liking from the Ravens, or they will likely franchise him again, which at that point would push him up to nearly $50 million for 1 year. So over the next 2 years, Lamar Jackson is going to make close to, and I'm going to the top end, close to almost $100 million guaranteed if they choose to franchise him both years. So I don't think there's anything questionable. I think I still agree with what he did. He bet on himself. And if the Ravens choose to not, pay him, or if he were to hit the open market, or even if they chose to try and trade him, he is going to get his money from someone. So I don't think it's questionable at all. To the point about his injury, it was fascinating to me on Tuesday. I didn't tell this story on the show because we didn't talk about Lamar. But a couple of weeks earlier, when I had gone down to Tampa for a game, there was a player that I've known for years, a veteran player, who told me, unsolicited, he said to me, "How's Lamar doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? You know, he's injured with the knee and whatnot." He goes, "No, I know, but how's he doing?" He said, "Because if he has a sprained PCL, a grade 2 sprain," he goes, "I had that injury. I suffered that injury in week 1. And he said, I just came back to the field this weekend for this game because we are in a playoff hunt and I want to try and help my teammates, but I'm not the same." And he said, if that is the injury that Lamar has, he said, not only is he unlikely to play this year in the playoffs, but if he does come back to try and help the team, he will not be the Lamar that we know because he will not be able to move the way that he moves. And so what happened? Lamar came out publicly yesterday, I believe it was, and said that's exactly what he has, is a grade 2 sprain of the PCL, and that his knee still is not right from that standpoint. That is not to say it will not be right. It simply takes time. So is there concern about him suffering these injuries the last 2 years and being unable to complete the season? Of course there is, to some degree. But I love the people who say, well, this is because Lamar is a running quarterback, totally ignoring the fact that both injuries occurred from him being in the pocket. So I don't think that has anything to do with it from that standpoint. I just think it's unfortunate that this happened at this time for Lamar, but I still think he made the right decision.
Yeah, it's the right decision. But let me just, I guess, I don't want to get caught up into the semantics vortex here. So let me be a little clearer. Off the top, when I said Lamar Jackson decided to gamble on himself because he wasn't gambling that he'd get a big contract. Of course he's going to get a big contract. He wasn't gambling that, hey, if it doesn't work out, at least I get the franchise tag, as you mentioned. Of course he's going to get the franchise tag. Young guy, talented guy. He was gambling that he could get the guaranteed contract. That was the gamble.
But as I said to you,
this is what I'm looking
he's
for.
He's going to get guaranteed money the next 2 years, period, if they franchise him. So again, we're talking about almost $100 million.
But he didn't want $100 million. He wanted, what did Deshaun Watson get? I mean, like these are the terms, Jim. He wants what Deshaun Watson got, if not more, deservedly so.
Absolutely. But what I would say to you is, what do we say? Patience is a virtue. Kirk Cousins played the same exact way. Got franchised for a couple of years, and then what? He got a fully guaranteed deal. If Lamar has to go 2 years under the franchise tag, playing for that guaranteed money, and then get out and potentially get a fully guaranteed deal, so be it. He played it perfectly. So, Lamar, as much as people may want to criticize his decision, I think he made a smart business decision. I think he is ultimately going to get his money. And as you know, with the way that revenues are coming in the NFL, with all of these new deals, TV deals, streaming deals, gambling, all of that, the salary cap is going to escalate. And at one point, there was one person who told me that it would get to a point where I think if the number was right of what I was told, it was somewhere, no, I'm not even going to say it because I don't have the right number in my head right now. But it was sort of exponential numbers, which means what? The longer this plays out, potentially, the more money Lamar is going to get. And that the contract that he might sign this year will be a bargain. And I'll leave you on this and let you have it. When Patrick Mahomes signed that deal for $500 million, what do we all say? Oh my God, what a deal, a half $500 million. And now what is it? We're saying, man, the Chiefs got over in that, because if he were to hit the market now, what kind of money would he get? It's all relative, Michael. You know that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I want to get your perspective from where you sit, the experience that you have. I want to get your perspective because I may be too close to this. So I just want to see how you read this. Now, I want you to picture the 1950s, the stereotypical 1950s dad, okay? He comes home, sits down in his favorite chair. He's a man of few words. He kind of grunts here and there, puts his feet up, and 15, 20 minutes later, after dinner, he's snoring. Daddy don't say nothing. He's a strong, silent type. He usually doesn't say anything. Now imagine that stereotypical dad coming home one day and he just starts opening up and he's talking about, hey, this is what I'm thinking about right now. This is what's on my mind. Everybody would be like, what the hell happened to you? And that's what I saw last night from the New England Patriots, who are the worst franchise to cover, the toughest and worst, but toughest franchise to cover in the NFL. You know I'm right. As a former president of Football Writers. Oh, yeah. I mean, just tough. They make it hard for you. They make it hard for you. It's Fort Foxborough. We call it Fort Foxborough for a reason. Every information, you got to scratch and claw for just a morsel of insight. So they don't tell you anything, and they love it.
Right.
They love shutting the media out and, by extension, shutting out their fans. But the fans didn't really complain because they won 6 championships over an 18, 19-year span. So, okay, so be it. You live with it. Yesterday, the Patriots released a press release in which they say, well, we're going to interview offensive coordinators next week, and we've started contract negotiations with Jerod Mayo to keep him here long term. Now, this is crazy on a couple of levels. One, if they're interviewing offensive coordinators, that's the Patriots' way of saying we moved on from Matt Patricia. They ain't mentioned Matt Patricia, but that headline tells you, that statement tells you that Matt Patricia will know, right. One, that's their way of saying, I made a mistake. But two, and this is, I want to ask you about Mayo, because Mayo is a head coaching candidate in Carolina. Burt Breer is supposed to be on the show today. Something came up, and wish the best for Burt, but he's supposed to be on the show today. He tweeted last night that there's still mutual interest in Carolina is interest from Mayo's standpoint and interest from Carolina. So wait a minute. Carolina wants to interview him as a head coach. Patriots are saying, no. We're talking to him about a long-term contract. How do you see it? Because I think it's just nuts. But how do you see it?
Well, I think both things can be true. The Patriots may want to extend him, but he may also have interest in becoming a head coach in Carolina. So, and the reality is that the Patriots cannot stop him from interviewing for a head coaching job based on all the rules that they have put in place over the last 2 years to deal with the lack of diversity among head coaches in the NFL. So I think both things can be true. Obviously, they want to keep him because he's a talented coach. He knows the Patriot way, having been there as a coach and a player. And David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, may view him as a legitimate head coaching candidate. I don't believe that to be true, but maybe he wants to interview him and pick his brain, and maybe he believes he's a serious candidate. But based on David Tepper's track record, I don't buy that one for a minute.
Hold on.
So we'll see.
Hold on now.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait, right there. Freeze frame.
I knew those journalistic ears. I knew those journalistic ears would peak up. But go ahead.
The way you said no, when you say something like that, okay, there's like there's some depth. There's a lot of depth and some context into what you have to say. So based on David Tepper's track record, you don't think Mayo's a serious candidate because tell me about David Tepper's track record and what you think about David Tepper.
Yeah, it's obviously brief. But let's look at the head coaching hire he made previously. He went out and got Matt Rule, wanted a name guy, wanted some splash, and what did that get him? It got him nothing. It got him to the point where he fired Matt Rule 5 games into the season. Here's the other thing about David Tepper. Look, growing up, I don't know if your parents said this to you, but they said it to me. It's not what you do, but it's how you do it. In other words, how you do something is more important than what you do. I look at David Tepper. He anointed Steve Wilks as interim head coach this year when the team was 1-4. They lose their first game. After that, they win what? They go 6-5, I believe, under Wilks. They're in the running for a playoff spot up until the next to last week. He does a tremendous job. He loses his best player. The team trades Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco. He decides that instead of playing Baker Mayfield, he's going to play P.J. Walker until Sam Darnold is ready. He gets rid of a couple of coaches who he believes don't fit the culture that he's trying to create. He did all of these positive things to create a positive culture, a winning environment, and whatnot. And what happens after the last game of the season in New Orleans? David Tepper doesn't even show up at the game to say thank you to the players and thank you to Steve Wilks for at least getting him through a difficult situation. So to me, that speaks a lot to character. So that's why I say from that standpoint, I'm not sure of what David Tepper's thinking or what he's going to do. I just think that how he did that was wrong. He can do whatever else he wants to do. It's his team. As Marty Schottenheimer, and I've said to you before, used to say to me, ownership has its privileges. But I believe how you do something is important as what you do. And I believe that those players and Steve Wilks deserve to have him there for that final game.
Yeah, no question. No question, Jim. He should have been there. We talked about this with Tony Dungy. And remember, Dungy said, hey, it's the first I've heard of this. I don't care what your record is. I don't care how you've done as an assistant. I don't care if you haven't won a game. You're an owner. You got to show up to support. And, it makes me wonder. I mean, I know the real reason. Like a lot of these owners have come into the league and they're not really vetted from a character standpoint. That's not really of interest to the people who are allowing them into this exclusive club. What they care about is, do your checks bounce? Okay. Yep. Are you worth everything that you said? Do people still write checks? I don't know. But are you worth everything that you say you're worth? Can you afford this? And if the answer is yes, they don't care. I mean, some of these guys, they have no concept of what it's like just to deal with. And I was going to be specific, but I'll be broad. I am going to paint with a broad brush here. Not only do they not know how to deal with professional athletes in a lot of cases, professional coaches, they don't know how to deal with people. They don't know how to, they just don't have great interpersonal skills because the money, in a lot of cases, has allowed them, has blazed the path where they don't got to deal with anybody. They don't have to just interact and just get to know people. Money will just open a path for them, and they go straight to the top, and they don't even have what some people call good sense. What some people call common decency.
It's a great point that you make, and I remember making that same point one time to Anquan Bolden about Stephen Ross and asking about the way that Stephen Ross did some things and in terms of relating to what's going on in the world. And Anquan, I remember he said to me, he said, "Do you know where he lives?" And then he went on to explain to me where Stephen Ross lives down in Florida. And he said, out there, it is their own world. They do live in a bubble. They have their own airport. You know, they deal with people who are like-minded and come from the same socioeconomic background for the most part and whatnot. So a lot of times they aren't dealing with things that are going on in the quote-unquote real world. So I think your point is completely valid here. The other thing the reason I said that about David Tepper too and Jerod Mayo is this. Explain to me what the difference is between Jerod Mayo and Steve Wilks. They're both defensive coaches. Wilks has been in your organization. He has shown you that he can build a winning culture. The team has played well under him. So if you're not going to hire Steve Wilks as your head coach, then tell me why you're going to hire Jerod Mayo.
Yeah, I would say probably a younger guy.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, what does it have to do with anything? We know this. We know that there are certain owners who think, all right, this is who I want to lead my organization. Younger guy who has played in the league, you can relate to these players, on and on. You got it. You know how it is. I don't buy it. Look, I look at what the vision is from your candidate. What's their vision? Can they get men to buy into it? Can they lead these men and get
Michael,
the best out of them?
that's my point.
So who is that?
But
I'm with you. I'm with
you. Yeah, I know that, but that's my point to the broader audience out there is that Steve has shown he can do that, right?
So Jerod, Jerod is a question at the head coaching level. Jerod has done that with the Patriots defense. He has. He and Steve Belichick have done a little tag team there, and the defense has performed well. Statistically has performed well against the best teams in the league. Not so much, but they had like 6 or 7 defensive touchdowns this year, and they're in top 5 in a lot of defensive categories. But he's never been a head coach. As a matter of fact, he's never been a play caller. He doesn't call the defensive. He didn't call the defensive calls. It's Steve Belichick does. But you know what? We say this, and you're right. Can we take it now that we're on this subject? Can we just add a little postscript to it? I don't know if you heard this from Woody Johnson yesterday. You see Woody Johnson's remarks about the quarterback.
Okay. I did not.
He said. So Woody Johnson said yesterday, he has, small group of reporters. He's talking about the Jets and how their defense was awesome. This is Woody. Yeah, defense is awesome. It's great, and we can do the same thing on offense. We're right there, and we're a quarterback away. Essentially, we're a quarterback away. We're a quarterback away from being a really good team. They just drafted a quarterback. Last year, number 2 pick, we know what happened. We know what happened last year. This season. But last year, they just drafted Zach Wilson. So Woody Johnson is essentially saying, it's over for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's not the guy. And, we're a quarterback away from greatness. But somewhere else in the story, Jim, and this is what really got me, and I just started shaking my head. The reporter says, Woody Johnson has been an owner for 23 years. You know how many times the Jets have made the playoffs in 23 years? Six. 6 times. So, hey, Woody, it's not the quarterback. Yeah, okay, I know Zach Wilson's not great, but the quarterback is not holding back your franchise. I could say maybe it's the owner. Maybe it's the owner. And just because, this drives me crazy, just because you got some money doesn't make you smart. You got money and you've got an association with an NFL team, It doesn't mean that you're some genius. So, according to the reporter in this article, Woody was furious. He was furious after every loss. I could see him just having an adult temper tantrum. He was furious after every loss. The Jets were 7-4. They lost their last 6. And Woody lost his mind after each of those 6 losses because he believes it's the quarterback, nice scapegoat, quarterback keeping his franchise from achieving greatness. Franchise hadn't won a Super Bowl since 1969. I like these guys. These guys crush me. They really kill me, Jim.
Well, look, you know this. We had Tony Dungy on earlier this week, and I remember a couple of years ago when Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich were the coordinators in the Super Bowl, and I wrote a story about the lack of diverse head coaches and what all goes into it, and you know, address the issue with ownership. And I'll never forget Tony Dungy saying that the NFL needs to have a class for owners on how to hire coaches because they don't know how to do it. They come from different business areas and they think they have all the answers, but they don't understand NFL culture. And the other thing is, some would call him and say, you know, who should I hire? And his first question to them would be, what are you looking for? And many of them don't have a vision of exactly what it is they're looking for. They will say simply, well, we want a winner. Okay, well, does that mean you want someone with previous head coaching experience or none, older, younger, play caller, non-play caller, offense, defense, special teams, someone who is a great communicator in terms of the public, or someone who relates to the players? Do you want a delegator? Do you want a hands-on guy? All of those types of questions that have to be answered. So in pursuing that story even further and talking to one GM, he said, having owners hire head coaches, giving them that power and having them do it would be like one of them owning, let's say, a software company, and then saying to me, a lifelong football guy, I want you to hire my chief software guy. And this GM said, I don't know the first thing about hiring a software guy, but yet you're going to ask me to do that. This situation is no different. You coming in from the outside to an NFL culture and saying, I know how to hire a coach, instead of listening to the people who might know. So, you know, look, Michael, you know me, I believe that in terms of the culture of an organization, it always starts at the top. And one of the reasons the Steelers have been so successful is because the ownership at the top of the Steelers have always known what it is they are looking for. And then not only that, but they give them the time to get it right. I think as Tony said, Chuck Nola's first year, went 1-13, I believe?
1-13. 1-13.
Yeah, so you have to give these guys time. And when you see these franchises like the Houston Texans who are firing coaches after 1 year, it's ridiculous. And that is a reflection of ownership, of the culture that's being created at the top. I mentioned the Detroit Lions this year. Think about if the Lions had fired Dan Campbell after last season when he only won 3 games, if they had been impatient. Or after they started, 1-6 this year, I believe.
1-6.
Think of ownership.
1-6 this year.
Think of ownership. It said, you know what? It ain't right. We're getting rid of them. You wouldn't have what you have. Where now many believe that the Lions should be the favorite to win that division next year, going into next year, considering all the draft capital they have and the young personnel that they have. So there are a lot of factors in this process that you talked about common sense. As I sit back and look at it, I just say, man, there truly is a lack of common sense when it comes to running organizations, when it comes to hiring head coaches or whatever. And the sad part is, as you talked about earlier, these teams that go from worst to first, is that every owner in the NFL believes that if his team is bad 1 year, that they can fix it in 1 year and it should win a division title or a championship the next year. And that is simply a faulty way of looking at doing your business.
Teams lack common sense. Jim Trotter, plenty of sense, man. Thank you for coming in. People need to know that you came in, too, at the last minute. Like, we just got you. You were on the beach. You were out there playing with your dog on the beach. We said, hey, Jim, can you come in for a second? You were like, oh, I got it. Like, you dressed like that at the beach.
No, bro. You know when you see me dressed like this, it means I am coming from my day job. And that's exactly what I did. Came from my day job because the back signal went up. And anytime I can help Mr. Michael Holley, I'm there to help him.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much. Great stuff as usual. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk next week.
You got it, my man.
All right, welcome back to Brother from Another. Kyle Shanahan, now I don't know if he really believes it, but he says he believes that there'll be a close game this weekend between his 49ers, the 2 seed in the NFC, and against Jason Johnson's number 7 seed, surprise, surprise, Seattle Seahawks. The 7 seed Seattle Seahawks. I mean, this is crazy. When they won their game, it's like, okay, well, that's a nice little win over the Rams in overtime. But we know the Packers. The Packers got it there at home against the Lions, and that'll be a close game, but the Packers will probably knock it down. Nope. Seattle gets it. How do you feel as a still Russell Wilson-less Seahawks fan? How do you feel about getting into the playoffs?
I have to say this. I will admit now for the entire world, including local radio people in Seattle, who I'm cool with this particular point. I am impressed with Pete Carroll's coaching of Geno Smith. I think now that the Seahawks probably only have the 5th seed because the Broncos were able to win their final game, that they might have to stick with Geno. But I don't think Geno or the Seahawks have a snowball's chance in Cancun of actually beating the 49ers in the playoff game this weekend. It's not going to happen. Okay. Brock Purdy is eventually going to turn back into a rookie. They may not make it to the Super Bowl, but I don't think that this 49ers team has anything to worry about from this particular Seattle Seahawks team. This particular Seattle Seahawks team doesn't have the defensive scheme. They have the defensive players, but not the defensive scheme to go against Debo and McCaffrey and Ayuk and every other person that the 49ers have. So I am looking forward to the game, but I know what's going to happen.
Okay, now listen. You didn't say. I thought you were going to say they don't have a snowball's chance in Cancun to keep it close. It's a little tease for my bet your money coming up. Now I don't think they'll win it, but hey Doc, I think in the third quarter you're going to be like, wait a minute, okay, we still got a game here.
No.
You think they're going to get blown out? You think they're going to get blown out by San Francisco?
Close only counts in gunshot wounds and coup attempts, okay? Like, that's the only time where close really matters. And when it comes to football, ain't no such thing as close. Close doesn't matter. They're probably going to lose by 2 scores. I honestly think they're going to lose by 2 scores. One of the strange transformations that's happened this year in the NFC West, besides the absolute implosion of Kyler Murray, which I predicted 2 years ago, but one of the strange things that's happened in the NFC West is that it used to be that the Seahawks were always able to beat the 49ers. Those used to be some great games, especially during the Garoppolo days. But now it seems like the 49ers own the Seahawks, but now suddenly the Seahawks can beat the Rams, which they never used to be able to beat. Pete Carroll was like 3-7 against the Rams. So I don't see that trend changing. And it seems like Kyle Shanahan, as much as this deeply pains me to give any credit to one of those Nepo baby coaches in the NFL like Kyle Shanahan, who I never respected from how he treated Donovan McNabb back in the day at the Washington Commanders, who managed to trick everybody into thinking that Matt Ryan was competent and still choked away the Super Bowl when he was at the Falcons. I have to say that Kyle Shanahan seems to have finally figured out the cheat code to beating Pete Carroll.
All right, before I ask you about padding one's resume, not you, but there's some people out there who pad resumes and still keep going. You know who I'm talking about. But before I ask you about that, tell me about the shirt.
Okay.
Tell me about the shirt. I'm intrigued. What's going on here?
Yes. This is from Black Star Collectibles, one of my favorite comic shops when I happen to be in different coasts of the country. They specialize in black superheroes, black comic books, black collectibles one way or another. And this is a custom-made shirt. I'm going to let you see the bottom here. Look at this. Look, Black Star Collectibles. On the back, it talks about how fresh they are. It is literally a shirt that is a compilation of all the black characters in the Star Wars movies, even though it's only about 8 of them in 35 Star Wars movies. But this is the black people that you have, all the way back to the young Darth Vader.
Now, and we were talking about this off the air, And I was saying, okay, even though it's only 8, you read these stories, especially recently in the social media era, where a black Star Wars character will appear, and all of a sudden they get all this pushback, all this hatred online. You don't belong. Why are you here? And as I said to you, in Star Wars, because like my kids are into Star Wars, so we have all gotten used to somebody with like one eyeball in the center of their forehead talking. We go, oh, that's normal. That's fine. Everything is normal. But you see a black person on the screen and say, you don't belong. Why is that? Why are they getting this kind of pushback anytime a black character is introduced?
It amazes me. It amazes me, Holley. Yeah, in this world, in a universe where a cult of crazy space wizards led by a semi-incestuous brother and sister couple and magical Muppets that teach you how to float, that's all fine. That's all completely normal. But the idea of a black stormtrooper, and let's be clear, the first time that Lando Calrissian was introduced, right, he was introduced as a pimp and a hustler. Like it was just right. There was almost a Scorsese level of racism coming out of Han Solo when he described Lando Calrissian, and yet you still have this hostility all the way up to the Reva character, the third sister last year. I think, frankly, that the vast majority of Star Wars fans, I know Ahmad Best used to play Jar Jar, the vast majority of Star Wars fans and people in it, they want to see a happy, open universe. But you have those loud fans who have a fantasy version of what they think this universe is like, and they don't like seeing black and brown folks.
Now, you said right up against it, you know, with Lando, played by Billy D. Williams. The reason he got away with it, because a lot of people said, well, that's Billy D. I don't care what they say. It's Billy D. You know, Billy D. Williams. Like, right. Doc, we don't even have, I don't even think we have an equivalent in 2023 because, you know, just so many people. Like, I just don't, people just got to understand what Billy D. Williams was to the culture, especially to the sisters of the culture. Oh my God, Billy D. I heard about growing up.
Oh, no.
Oh, my aunts, my cousins, like they all talked about Billy D. and that was it. And then they had that look. You knew.
Oh yes. Let me make this clear. I should have sent you guys this picture. I know we were going to end up having this conversation. Last Christmas, not 2021, not 2022, but 2021, I had the opportunity. I do like a weekly brunch with some of my friends out here, whatever. I met Billy D. Williams. He is one of the most charming, coolest, smoothest guy. Yes. And then LeVar Burton showed up. So I got to hang out with Jordy and Lando at the same time. Even Jordy was impressed by Lando. That is how much of a big deal Billy D. Williams is to the culture. That Star Trek people are in awe of hanging out with Star Wars people. I mean, he is just a charming, gracious, incredibly entertaining, still very, very witty guy. And I think there are very few, there are people who catch pieces of him. There's Jamie Foxx has a little bit of his energy and Michael B. Jordan has a little bit of his energy, but I don't think there's anybody in our current Hollywood that encapsulate all of the charisma and the charm and the sex appeal and the action that he had through the 70s and the early 80s. It's probably the only reason that he was able to break through the glass ceiling in the Star Wars universe and be the first black man to get into a hyperdrive.
No, that's one way to break through the glass ceiling. Another way to break through the glass ceiling is just to lie. Hey, I started this company. I went to this school. I graduated. You know, I wasn't number one in my class. I was number 3. On and on and on and on. I can't wait to hear your take about Jorge Santos and what it means for the American political landscape.
You know, this man is like ground zero for intersectionality. He told us he was a gay, black, Jewish, lost employees at the Pulse shooting, a national championship volleyball player. I am literally waiting for him to tell me that his name is Jason Johnson, because he's literally taken on every identity he can think of on the face of the planet. I said this at the time, Holley, and it's bizarre to me that there was so little vetting, not just on the part of the local Republican Party, but I can't believe that his Democratic competitors didn't just do simple checking. The man has made up his entire existence. We don't know if his name is really Jorge Santos. He has an ex-wife. None of this makes any kind of sense. But what I think it indicates is that there are ways in which we make assumptions and policies we shouldn't make anymore. We assume people are going to be somewhat honest. We assume people are going to tell the truth about their taxes. We assume that people are going to be honest about how they voted one way or another. You can't assume those things. You have to check them out.
Right.
And if we had a semi-functioning government, at least on the House side, that wasn't run by a bunch of dime store terrorists masquerading as a political party, they would probably kick him out. But McCarthy and most of the Republicans have little or no political integrity anymore, so they're going to let this man and his lying self continue to show up. He is the embodiment of the "why you always lying" meme that was really popular a couple years ago. I don't understand. They should play that every time he walks into the chamber.
I would die if I heard him say, "Hey, my name is Dr. Jason Johnson." I may have taught a couple classes at Morgan State. There's a couple classes, my students love me. Last thing with you before we go, and I don't know if you have been following the Sean McVay, will he stay or will he go? Well, today,
yes,
the Rams have announced that Sean McVay and McVay is announcing that he's staying. So what do you think that means? Sean McVay will return. Here's the Ian Rappaport tweet. He took a few days to consider his future, and now he is going through staff changes. So was this whole thing about staff changes? Is it a passive-aggressive way of saying, "Hey, you can look for another job. Go ahead. I don't know what I'm doing." Then after he tells him that, you're like, "Well, by the way, I'm coming back." I don't know. What do you think?
It reminds me of like this 20-year-old comedy routine Sinbad used to do, where he said, like, you get into an argument with your spouse and she gets out the car. She ain't really trying to walk home, right? She's just going to pretend that she's walking home. You just keep the car going, and eventually they get back in the car. It was like the old school saying. This is all this was. Sean McVay got out of the car and said, "I'm going to walk home. I'm going to leave. I don't want to do this anymore." He was never going to quit being the Rams coach. Ever, under any circumstances. He's 36, 37 years old.
Well, why do you say that, though? Why do you say that? But he's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's got a Super Bowl win. He'll be a hot commodity if he steps away and comes back.
Well, but where else would he want to go coach, right? You only had a bad season because Matt Stafford, who was always overrated, Pat Stafford, but you only had a bad season because Matt Stafford got hurt and a lot of other people got hurt. That's the only reason why. Otherwise, the Rams would have been competitive this year. You're not going to quit because you have one season where you only have 4 or 5 wins. That doesn't drive people like Sean McVay. I never believed for any second that he was going to go. Now, Aaron Donald, I think, might be about to go, but I don't think Sean McVay is going to leave. And here's the other thing, Holley. I got to make sure people understand this when we have these conversations about coaching. The coaching process, and your last guest was just talking about this, the process of being selected as a coach is so arbitrary and so difficult in the NFL. These owners don't really know what to look for, but they look for somebody who reminds them of them, or they go pick the biggest name one way or another. Sean McVay has a rich owner, a fantastic city, a Super Bowl ring, a Super Bowl appearance. What better opportunity would there be for him if he were to leave the Rams? You want to go coach Kyler Murray? You can't even get him to study. You want to go to the Broncos? It might be a good team, but your starting quarterback is 34 years old. You want to go to the Carolina Panthers where they have no quarterback? Or do you want to go to the Texans where clearly nobody there knows anything about coaching? Sean McVay was never going to go anywhere, which now means, my guess for this weekend, that Sean Payton is desperately hoping for the San Diego Chargers to lose to Jacksonville so he can work with Justin Herbert, because other than that, there aren't that many good jobs left available in the NFL this offseason.
Jason Johnson, Dr. Jason Johnson, man. Always bringing it. Always. Appreciate you, man. Love that shirt. Love your takes. We'll catch up with you soon, man. Oh, we love the comment section. We love when we have an opportunity to interact with you and answer some of the questions and burning topics that are on your hearts and on your minds. We also love Natalie. She is our social media, not just a guru, social media genius and personality extraordinaire. What's up, Natalie?
Hey, Michael. How are you doing? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. And is it a happy Friday in the comment section streets, or are people a little bit on edge? What are the people talking about this week?
We have a mix, but earlier this week, you and Michael Smith Two Michaels. It's so much to work with. You guys had a conversation. Actually, no, Jim Trotter was on that day. So we had
Jim Trotter. Yeah, Trotter.
Yes. So
yeah.
We had a conversation with Tony Dungy, and he was great. Everyone loved that. But some people thought maybe we weren't covering that topic in full. They thought that race played a factor in the termination, and we didn't touch on it. And specifically, one Twitter user asked to our Twitter post, which had Tony tagged in it, asked if race was a factor. And Tony actually replied and said, no, dysfunctional organization. So at least we know what Tony's opinion is on that. But I'm curious, do you think race played a factor? Because many of our viewers do.
We had this conversation last year. So why don't we bring it up? The honest answer is we talked about it last year. Because it was a similar situation, we thought, when David Culley was brought in to a dysfunctional organization. So Tony is right. It is a dysfunctional organization that perhaps has some type of discomfort with African-American leadership and giving that leadership time to display itself. So yeah, they're dysfunctional. They're stupid. The Houston Texans. And they also might be racist. So both things are true. So David Culley comes into a bad situation, one and done. He's out. Like, what is this? Brian Flores thought he was going to get the job. And once he was told he wasn't going to get the job, remember, he made the Texans a part of his racial discrimination lawsuit.
Yeah.
So Brian Flores included the Texans in his lawsuit. And so, I know what it was. No, I got it wrong. I got ahead of myself. Brian Flores was a candidate for the job. He has this lawsuit. Now he's no longer a candidate. So he includes them. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Y'all about to give me this job. I got this lawsuit. Now y'all tripping. They bring in Lovey. They didn't want to, clearly.
Right.
1 year out. So back-to-back, Culley, Lovey out, and who knows where they'll go next. So I think they have a cesspool of problems. But I do want to point out, and thanks for bringing it up, we want to be accountable and we want to hear what you're talking about. I want to bring up that the Houston Texans in 2023, get this, Natalie, will be paying 4 head coaches.
Yes.
Still paying Billy O'Brien, a white coach. They're paying him still.
Yep.
They're paying 2 black coaches. And why not make it a rainbow? Bring in a coach of another race so you can pay him 2. So you have 4 different coaches. And we can all see just how clueless you are as an organization. Good topic, though.
Yeah, we did have someone who actually commented on that and said this might be the ideal job. You go in for 1 year, get terminated, and still get paid. So
get your money.
So as you know, yesterday we had the great Malcolm D. Lee on, creator of the Best Man franchise.
What a highlight.
Amazing conversation. So Instagram and Twitter was loving it. And, you know, on Instagram, I agree. This user, Instagram viewer, he's saying, we need the outtakes, or we need it's hard, a director's cut. There you go. You know, when he talked about the fact that argument between Robin and Harper, the Clarence Thomas one, he said that was improv. And it was kind of like a shock factor for everyone who was listening and watching. So that's why we have this other person saying mind blown. But I want to know what wasn't said, Michael. Like, did you get curious?
Right. That's what he said, hey, we gotta calm it down a little bit. I love what he said. He said, look, we can't be going this far. We can't go this far. So, but I love his statement. I could have listened to him talk. I mean, there's so many segments of that interview where if we had just stayed on that singular topic, it would have been good enough, right? I could have listened to him talk about like the quality and the crafts, the craft of all of these actors. Because I was thinking that, Natalie, watching it, like, this is so real. They're acting.
Yes, exactly.
But they just kind of just pull you into their world, and you think that Robin is a real person. You think Harper is, I know Harper. Like, wait a minute. These are actors that, playing characters that he created. But just a wonderful conversation with Malcolm Lee, and we should have him on again.
Yeah, and a great segue with Robin and Harper. Black Twitter is not going to let it end. So even though the director himself said there is no villain, they said, that's cute. Thank you, Malcolm, but no. And they took sides still. So we have some people saying Robin still, and we have some people saying Harper still. They will not let the debate end.
But I agree. I agree with Malcolm, though. Malcolm made the best point, and I don't know if this has been talked about in the Twitter and Instagram streets. He said Robin is disgruntled with America. Let's not miss that point. And so if you just take it in that kind, who hasn't been there? You want to talk about villains? Who hasn't been there? Come on now.
America's the villain. That's the villain.
Natalie, good stuff. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. We'll see you on Monday. All right, it's my bet, your money. As we go into the weekend, you know I'm passionate about putting a little extra money in your pocket. And you see my picks there. We'll get my record next week. My record is a good one. It's a winning record. But my pick of the weekend, look at it. Seahawks at Niners. Guess who I have? The Seahawks. Now, I got the Chargers, I got the Bengals, I got the Bills, and I got the Giants. But the Seahawks, pick of the weekend. Thanks for hanging out. See you on Monday. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.